Tales of the Supers, Part 1. Katherine Bell writing as Ellie Hicks. Book 1. Caliburn. Let's see what would pull Caliburn out of the game now, shall we? Part of her was too scared sick to even think about saying a single half-breathed word, listening to what the two-bit hoodlum was saying and what it could mean for the nice, peaceful life she had set up for herself here. But another part of her, the old part that she had thought long since buried, was raging mad, angrier than she had ever been in her life, even back in the day, when pissed off had been her regular state of being. No matter that neither half of her is in agreement, though, because there isn't a lot she can do. Superior strength and quick healing did not mean invulnerable, at least not in her case, and a knife in the leg was certainly a very effective way of stranding her in one place. She actually found herself wishing the punk had been dumb enough to have brought a gun instead. Someone might have heard that and be calling the police right now. Not that she had a lot of faith they could do anything about this. There was a quiet, weak part of her, the part that was too scared to even scream, that just wanted to blubber and plead for mercy, plead for this punk to just leave, to not go any further into her home, to not find out why they had gotten out of the game. The stronger half of her was disgusted by this, though she was putting a lot of work into keeping them both awake. The punk opened the door that led to the family room, almost as if he had known that this was the exact door she didn't want him to go through, because that was where Quentin and Angela were playing. Two sets of young eyes looked up immediately going wide, when it was not her standing on the other side of the door. And that was what finally broke through her muteness. "Quinn, take your brother and run, now!" she shouted. It didn't even take an effort to summon up the most commanding voice she could. Kit was no longer in control. Instead, it was Caliburn, and she was not pleased. But even Caliburn was shocked when, in the few seconds it took her to regain her footing, the punk disappeared in a whoosh of displaced air, only to reappear a moment later with his arms wrapped tightly around either of her children. Angela's feet dangled about a foot above the floor, and her blue eyes were painfully wide in terror, locked on her. Quentin was already struggling, kicking and trying to bite, anything to get away. Caliburn felt her sword slide free, just like old times, just like she hadn't been in retirement these long 5 years, just like she was still in her fighting prime. The metal was still as cold as it ever was as it slid free from its home within her, emerging from the palm of her hand, bladed in first. She wrapped her hands around the hilt and took a fighting stance as best she could with a much smaller blade stuck in her leg than the one she currently held. "Let my children go." Her voice was low and even. Anyone who had fought with her or against her all those years ago would have recognized that tone. The one that only came out when she was deadly serious about something. And she was most assuredly deadly serious about this. No one laid a hand on the one she loved and lived to tell the tale. "I won't tell you twice. If you want them back, you'll have to come get them." She took one hesitating step forward, her injured leg nearly buckling under her weight, and he took 3 steps backwards in return. "The masters will tell you where to go. Keep your phone on you at all times." He paused, perhaps realizing that he sounded like a glorified messenger boy, or perhaps a particularly worthless secretary, and cleared his throat hard. "If you want to see your children alive again, you will do exactly what they say." There was another whoosh of displaced air, much louder this time. The punk had vanished again, this time with both her kids. There had been a time when Caliburn had been one of the known and arguably more feared of the supers. She had, in fact, been known for her take-no-prisoners attitude, as well as the fact she very rarely worked with anyone else. Most of the so-called supers tend to operate in teams, but Caliburn, she had never been one to play particularly well with others. The exception to that rule had lain with her brother Arthur, Christopher, and the super's liaison to the regular world, Ben Walker. Chris had been easy enough to work with, even before they both turned pro-super. In fact, she attributed that plus to the fact they were twins. There were a lot of supers who were twins. She had met precious few sibling supers, in fact, who were not twins. Neither she nor Chris had been quite sure what to make of that fact. In fact, no one, not even Kit, had seen hide or hair of Chris since before Caliburn retired 5 years ago. It had been closer to 7 since anyone had seen Chris or Arthur in person. There had been emails though, so she did know how to contact him. But as for finding him, she was in the dark there. She would just have to hope that he would be willing to meet with her. Then she had a lot of hope for dealing with. After all, he was her ex, as well as Quentin and Angela's father. The two of them had made a deal when she retired from the super scene that she would keep the kids full-time until he was ready to stop acting as a liaison for various supers, at which point they would renegotiate their arrangement. He had not reached that point yet, though, and instead he worked with various supergroups. The group he was liaison to now was still so fresh that none of them had picked code names yet. She would definitely send Chris an urgent email requesting his help, begging for his help. It was going to have to be Ben that she turned to. Hopefully, he would have the resources to find these masters before anything happened to her, their children. At that point, after all, she would be forced to make sure that something untoward happened to the punk that broke into her house, the masters he reported back to, and anyone else that got in their way. If the saying went, "Hell hath no worry, fury like a woman scorned," then surely that went double for her.